recording, so we can see this on YouTube eventually. So welcome everyone. Please, for the maintainer, sign in Planning Poker, so we can put an estimation about the effort to implement a specific ticket. This will help me and the rest of the teams to, size tickets accordingly that are not too big nor too small. And for today, we have quite a lot of tickets open. I think we will not be able to go over all of these, but I briefly look into them, and I think we can split them into 2 categories, or 3 with this one. One is to make use of the Go workspace in order to facilitate the way of handling dependencies between the different sub-projects of KLT. Another one is to get rid of the scheduler in favor of the readiness gates API. And the last part is one on the top, start to support different runtimes for running tasks. Not just Node or Dino in particular, but also Python and containers. Since Python and containers should be the main focus of the next release, I would suggest to start with this. Or do you have a ticket that you would like to talk in particular? I see nope from Anna, and I will take that the group says no. So let's go over these tickets.
Giovanni, you're not sharing still.
Oh, I'm totally bad. Is this the right one? Yes. Thanks, Andre. So let's start with integration. Integrate the Python runtime. So there is a dependency on this one. So let's start from this one.
Yes.
Who wants to talk, Anna or Andre?
I was writing this so I can talk. Yeah, what's basically in this ticket, as Johnny already mentioned, we want to introduce another possibility how to run or what to run as part of Keptn task. In this case, we want to introduce a time runner which will be used in the very similar manner as the Dino or Node.js runner is currently working. So the first task is to create such an image. So that means we need to create a small script that will actually run the user-defined Python scripts, and additionally to that, to create a Docker file, so we can build this to an image that we can afterwards use as a part of Keptn tasks. Or that means part of the jobs that are run, part of the Keptn tasks. Yeah, so what needs to be done? As mentioned, small bash script accepting the environmental variables which are passed to the Python, to the script, and a Docker file for building the image. There is a POC of the brief implementation, as previously to these tickets, research was made, and therefore that we know what needs to be implemented and such things.
I might have a question here. All the pip packages which are referred here, is there any not documentation but any discussion made which?
Sorry, I didn't hardly could hear you.
Oh, sorry. Test.
It works
better.
on my hand.
just as a question, was there some kind of discussion or yeah, was there some kind of discussion which pip packages should be installed by default in this container?
It was defined in the cap.
Okay, sorry.
So that's I was doing the research back then, and therefore I referred to these packages. I think it was Git, but if you open Giovanni the Docker file example, there's a list of packages that are installed as part of the image, basically. I think it was Git,
Python request. Okay.
Git Python PyML.
I'm looking into the announcement so we know exactly. Is this one?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. There is the list. Curl Qt Git. Basically, we are building.
Okay, got it.
We're building the image already on existing Python free runtime, but because of we want to inject some additional command line parameters that can be injected for a casual Python script. Therefore, we need to create a simple wrapper around it so we can actually pass it and make use of it.
Yeah, but that's a different thing for the dependency packages. Packages are let's.
There's a typo create there, yes.
Yes. Okay. And the POC, so resources. I think we are ready to estimate, or is there any other questions? Nope. So I think we can go over the vote. Okay, everyone is for an S.
Except for
do
May,
you
who doesn't know what she's talking about.
do you have strong opinions, or do you trust our gut feeling?
Oh, I trust you guys for your, yes. There will be
Okay.
some documentation impacts here, but nothing terrible, but fun
Yeah.
stuff.
I think we will handle the documentation in a follow-up ticket. This is just a groundwork to create those images.
Right.
Because after that, we need also to integrate everything in the pipeline. Yes.
Ah, yes. That's what I was thinking. That's why I was going for large, thinking of the bigger pictures. This is a smaller one. Never mind.
No worries. There's also one missing thing. Mind
There's
that.
Typo here too. Pipelines, definition of done.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Pop. Okay. Okay. So basically, after we create this new Docker file, we should handle in the pipeline everything like we're doing right now for the Node.js Dino part. One thing is that we need to manually create this entry, the JHCR on the GitHub registry, basically container registry, because the first upload needs to be done manually and not automatically via bot. Otherwise, it will fail because the manual one will also create this registry entry or package entry. So the first upload, do that manually. Everyone with write permissions to this repo has access to write permission to the packages as well. Then definition of done. I have one question about renovate ignore dependency. What do you mean, Andre, with this?
We already have a function runtime mentioned as ignore dependencies in the renovate configuration. So I guess this means that this dependency isn't bumped or whatever. You see, ignore deps. The GRC. Yep. Sorry for not being more verbose.
No. Just for me to understand, because it feels like weird that we don't want to bump
sorry.
dependencies.
No.
Let's see. Up. And then
That's,
the second one.
The second one is to edit. Yeah, as you can see, the following pipelines actions are adapted. Deploy KLT on cluster. It's an action where we actually deploy the KLT, and this needs to be adapted there. Or these are the basically pipelines or actions that need to be adapted in the way that the Python runner or Python runtime image is built, tested, or whatever in there.
No, I get confused by the configuration and the pipeline, but now
Okay.
it's clear.
Yeah, so most of the pipelines just refer as a matrix to each of these, and we just need to add another element
Exactly.
to the list.
Yeah, we don't need to. Okie dokie. All clear for the rest of the team? If there are no further questions, then let's put an estimation. So, Mac, do you have any question or?
No, I'm looking. Why don't I see anybody else?
Oops, I'm gonna send this link.
Here.
I will send again the link. Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Oopsie, come on.
there. Now I can see everybody's stuff.
So, Flo, strong opinion for NES versus NM.
Not really. I wasn't sure because this one is definitely more than the one we discussed previously, but since it's more or less copy of paste in most parts for what we already have for the functions, runner image S would also be perfectly fine.
Perfect. Perfect. Then more towards integrating the results of the new image into the KLT.
Yes, so this is the actual implementation in the operator with the use of the already created image. First thing we need to do is introduce a new Python parameter into the Keptn task definition spec, so the user can actually define the container and the volumes. And so, gosh, I'm thinking about one ticket and speaking about another. Sorry. The user can actually define the Python script and Python parameters to the Keptn task definition spec. That's the first point. I think that's pretty clear. We want to add the possibility to add a function reference, to define an inline function, to define a HTTP reference, define the script via the config map reference, and then some additional parameters, command line parameters and secure parameters. Maybe would be better if we add command line parameters and not CMD parameters.
Do we allow this in the Node.js part?
Yes.
I didn't remember that. Should be as close as the. Come on.
The only difference is the command line
Command parameters.
because
Exactly.
Dino needs for that to be sent to an M bar. That's how we did it.
Yeah, but that's behind the scene for the end user that writes things into the CRD.
Yes.
Everything should be quite similar. The only thing is in one piece is inside the Python and the other piece is inside function.
Exactly.
Okie dokie.
Yes. Then next step would be to introduce a new environmental variable in the KLT operator deployment, pointing to a new Python runner image. So we will have in the same manner as for the functions runtime environment variable, which value is the actual image of the Python runner. There is a linked example what it's meant under this.
Okay, then the same with the config map.
Exactly. So when the inline function is defined for the Python runner, this function should be stored in the config map and afterwards referenced in the task definition and the task. So fairly, again, copying the path which the JS builder is working in.
Sorry, but these are more details than DoD or acceptance criteria. I would
Okay,
say.
yeah.
Then modify the example folder.
That's modifying the examples
Yeah.
for the users mainly, but also for us as a pre-documentation step.
So pre-documentation is part of this, but not documentation.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a separate ticket for that.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Or perfect.
Yes, and unit test, integration test, but that's quite clear.
All clear for the rest of the team? What's need to be done? If no one speaks, I consider that clear to me. So we can go.
Add somewhere also that maybe the task definition controller also is modified?
Yes,
No,
here it's
not the task controller, but the task definition controller.
It's there, I guess.
no, there is no task definition.
There is.
Because the task definition is handled by the task controller, but the task definition controller is handling the config map. And yeah.
It's in the DoD, so.
Was not really
Yeah.
there. Okay, both controllers needs to be adopted. Okay, Anna, you are. Oh, perfect. Awesome. Perfect agreement. Then finally, to make Meg happy.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good that we have more a keen eye on documentation than before. So now that we have everything built and working, we need to provide documentation about that. And reasoning for this definition of done?
Taking for granted that this should happen after the two runtime have been, or after at least each of the runtime has been implemented. Take just the examples and the samples that we should provide and put them in the Keptn task. Right now, as far as I could tell, the only place in documentation is this write task where we make directly examples only with the Dino. So
There's
we could,
a reference page for the Keptn task definition.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we could extend this to have example for all of them. There is a link in the.
Yes, perfect. There is already there. Sorry, I missed it. Defining.
And yeah, and then maybe to make sure that we specify what is available from what version.
because my problem with that, it's I've mixed opinions. If we look into the documentation, we already have
Are you looking at
Oh.
the development one? Because it's
From-
quite different.
just for saying that we are version already of the documentation. So if we release this documentation since 0.8, it's visible only if you click on the .8.
I was not sure what happens with the examples, so, but this is a fair point. We should just get rid of it. And this guy also should be linked in the PR, the concept.
I will leave this here just to double check whatever it makes more sense. But I will add.
It's updating a section that is not yet written, but is this going to need a little piece in, I mean, maybe a couple of paragraphs, but in architecture about how tasks are executed, specifically because you have the different runtimes? Or am I going too far?
So let me go to the development one first. Where is the architecture?
Oh, it's under concepts right now, which is not good. It needs to be up there. And it doesn't have much, it's, I'm Rich is back working on it. We don't have a lot, so we, as I say, we did the first section we do not yet have. But it seemed to me like how tasks got executed just got a lot more interesting from an architect, you know, just a little bit about how Keptn figures out which runtime to pull for a task. And can I have an application where some tasks are written in JavaScript and some are in Python,
As long as they are separate tasks.
as long as they're separate tasks?
That's maybe. I don't know if this should be part of the architect. I mean, to tackle the architectural part with this ticket. Maybe
Yeah.
we need a proper follow-up.
It's a question. We're still figuring out the architecture. It was just a question. We'll figure it out.
First of all, so you have time to estimate. Mention the limitation about a single runtime per task. So is everything clear? Do you need more input for this, or is the scope of this ticket clear enough to put
I
an
think-
estimation?
I think it's clear.
Perfect. Then let's set an estimation. And sure. Okay, I'm underestimating stuff. Florian Meg with an M, Andre and Anna with an S.
I really vacillated as to whether it be small. It actually is not that much writing, I think. The biggest one is going to be getting the extra examples, the extra tested examples. And that's why I went to medium, but my writing, I think, is fairly small.
The examples are already provided as part of the previous ticket. That's why I put an XS, because it's, I guess, fairly small text, but I'm fine with an S. Florian?
Fine with an S.
Okay, so ready to be picked. And 08, perfect. Okie dokie. Then, sorry, my OCD requires some task criteria before definition of done.
I beg for your pardon.
No worries, Anna. So the next one is to introduce a validation webhook, because we mentioned in the previous ticket, there are several. There is a limitation that we don't allow to provide in a Keptn task definition, a definition for a Node runtime and a Python runtime, but only one of the two. So we need to introduce a validation webhook that makes sure whenever a user tries to apply a manifest with both of them filled in, the application fails. So there is a fast loop to tell the user, nope, there is an error because of this. Did I forget something, Anna?
There is a link to a previous PR where we tested validation webhook in our operator, and I think this can be useful for implementation to have an idea what has to be touched. I put it in the first part, and the last part is also an example for a test.
Was this one?
What happens? Okay, I'm trying to think. The third syntax for the current function ref is that you list a whole bunch of other tasks in this, so you have one task that actually comprises several tasks. Are all of those tasks going to have to be either JS or Python, or could you call a mix? It's gonna have to be one or other because you don't have the runtime, right?
So, as
Please.
far as I can imagine, this logic is now contained in the specific JavaScript function runtime as we refactored it right now.
Yeah.
This would work there, not sure. Or maybe, Flo, do you think?
Yep, that sums it up. I think, yeah.
But I guess as a prerequisite, we need to implement the Python runtime and container image write time. So we have everything in place.
I will provide the depends on to be defined. Okay. Then let's go over. Actually, it was correct how we write them. But this is the definition of done. And this is the acceptance criteria. So what to be done? Use KubeBuilder to generate a new validation webhook. Then implement the logic, the business logic of this webhook, where we have this exact only one between the different runtimes that we have. And then add some tests for it. Double space here. All clear? Questions for this? Ready to estimate? So quite different opinion. Meg, Anna, why an S?
I
guess
wasn't.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in my mind, we have auto-generated code. Complexity is not that high. The logic is pretty straightforward, but I'm okay with both.
Flo, Andre, what? Why an M?
Yeah, the complexity of the webhook itself is obviously not that high, but with tests being added and also recently I struggled a little bit with adding validating webhook to the metrics operator because it seemed like, for example, QBuilder wasn't creating the validating webhook configuration. So I had to do some troubleshooting. That's why I have a bias more towards the higher complexity value right now in this particular area.
I have also the same bias because I tried to add a validation webhook for the Keptn config. And there I had to touch manually multiple manifests that were automatically generated before saying we don't need that. I'm gut feeling more towards an M than S because also being a good first issue, looking in particular to you, Rakshit and Godfrey, you might want to pick this up, and there is an extra complexity on supporting new users to make or implement this. I see thumbs up. So we have an agreement.
Should we work on it together or another?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You mentioned us, I and Rashid picking up this issue. Should we work on the issue together or another? I want to get more clarification if we should work on the issue together.
Yeah, sure. We can work on this together. I'm working on a validating webhook for metrics operator right now. So we can work on this later if you want.
Sure. Just ping me when you are, I'm on Slack already, when you want us to pick it up.
Sure.
Mind that there is a dependency. So first we need to implement the runtimes, then we can add the validation webhook. So you could start, but you won't be able to finish, or better say, you will not be able to test it. So I will ping both of you as soon as we finish to implement the container runtime and the Python runtime. And thanks a lot for basically volunteering to implement this. Let me keep this in another window so I don't forget to add the links later.
Do you want to assign it or
Sorry?
are we ready to assign it?
Actually, yes. Let me go back then into the and Godfrey, how do you pronounce your name so I don't butcher it again?
So it's Geoffrey. So
Geoffrey.
my GitHub ID is Geoffrey Keptn.
I think you need to comment on this ticket, otherwise I won't be able to add you here because you need to be part of the organizations.
You can send me the link to it. Let me
Absolutely. Let me open the Zoom chat. And I need to add dependency. Okay. Then meanwhile, did we cover everything for?
This one, the bottom.
Yes. So have you commented? Yes,
yeah,
I see a one. Perfect. Awesome. So remove it. Yes. So we already spoiled a bit the content of this ticket, speaking of the remaining ticket, but we want also to support general container runtime. So you just provide the image tag and we run that as part of pre and post task. Only basically we decide if the task is successful or not based on the return code of the container. So here, I will. Anna, do you want to start talking about this ticket?
Yes, so
Thank you.
we agreed that basically we want to leave freedom to user to set up whatever container they would like as a task. So the idea is to introduce a spec like we have for JavaScript function spec for the container spec. And this spec will contain the container, single container that can be run, and the list of volumes that are associated with it. At the beginning, we thought the volumes were not needed, but if you want to specify a specific kind of volume, then you need to have it as is, and then you can copy paste this information inside the job. And then after introducing, yeah.
1 second, sorry. Why am
So
I allowed to specify a volume here?
I could
Actually
just
makes sense, yeah.
specify the amount in the container, but then when I have to specify the source, I would need information.
No, fair point. If I want to mount some data, like the database for whatever reason,
Yeah,
I could do that. Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
I'm up for debate for this. This is what we concluded with Andre, made the most sense for now.
Mhm.
So basically that needs to be added in the API, and then we need to do exactly the same that is there for the JavaScript, just for this container. So we need to implement the interface with this function I mentioned here, and this function should return exactly what we parse from this container spec. So the container and the volume, no more, no less, and then we add this spec in the job, and the job is ready. There are two functions used for the logic of the generic building. One to decide which one is the runtime, and one to decide whether or not we do have a runtime defined. And this should be updated to ensure that we check also for business. And then tests, and as for Andre's description before, modifying the examples and the samples so that we have them for the documentation. Yeah, I think that's it, Andre. I don't know if I missed something.
I think that's good.
Still thinking about the volume. Do we introduce any problem with this? What if I'm trying to read volumes randomly? I don't recall, is there any service account for volumes or not? Because I don't use persistent volume claims since ages, I forgot.
It's not, I guess, the volumes can be created without also with the default service account.
But can I mount any volume in the cluster?
I would say yes, but not sure.
Because I can exploit this with a brute force and mount something important that I should not have access to.
That's we're speaking about volumes and volume mounts. Therefore, if we reference a container there, we can mount anything.
Inside the container, because
Yes, inside the container, because volumes is just for creating volumes like type empty dir and such things. But actually the mounting happens in the container spec definition. So where you can actually modify the volume that happens in the v1.container, which is inline.
the thing you could get rid for a volume that you should not.
If we are,
that's the point.
if we are speaking about exploiting some volumes that are already created and modifying it without permission from the container, for example, then you can mount these volumes as a container. But
but the container part is just saying this volume in which folder in the local file system is mounted. And it's not saying here in the job level volume part, let's say, there you can say, I want this AWS bucket, S3 bucket, for instance, to be mounted. And then in the container side, okay, this S3 bucket, in which folder I can find the files.
Yes, but
So
yeah.
I think it's easier to add things than to remove things as an interface to the users. I suggest to start without the volumes, so you cannot mount anything. It's just an empty dir by default.
So we always mount empty dir.
Exactly. And if users want to have any file access to something, they can do that inside their own container. For instance, having a Git clone at the beginning of the task, or provide the image already with the data that they need. And if there is a need for a volume, then we can do that in the
Can you
future as a follow-up.
the empty dir in the description? Would it be as many empty dir as many mount in the container definition is there, or? Because I can specify more than one source in a.
That might be a task for a validation webbook. To allow upright file system container. That's a valid point. Should we have a validation webbook that looks into the volume part of the container? Maybe it can be a follow-up task because we fail dynamically. Basically, when we try to create a job, we can do things better or fail faster with a validation webbook, but this can be done in a follow-up. Okay, this was quite a huge discussion. All clear for this? Is there any question for what need to be implemented?
Is documentation for these features included in this estimate?
Yeah, the ticket.
Is a separate ticket or?
Yes, I don't have it anymore open, but the one that we discussed before.
Okay. Be part of that same too. Okay.
Because we refine. Here we. Yeah. Let me maybe. Namely, container and Python. So both of them are covered with this ticket. So for this ticket instead, the container implementation, all clear? Or do you have further questions? Silence and everyone put the vote. So, okay, I'm overestimating. Mike is underestimating. The remaining says
No,
it's in the
Meg
middle.
just changed her mind because Meg was really thinking medium, but Meg keeps doing that, so I went small. But
I can change my cast after. I'm a bit scared. I need to adapt this part. But I trust the remaining of the maintainers. To do a great job.
I reckon that should still be there though, Giovanni, because we use that to set up the job. So we will return it as we fill it instead of as the user wants.
Ah, fair point, Anna. Yes. Yes.
If it's
yes,
only
because-
an empty dir, we're not going to have space ramifications about the mounting volumes, right? And not having a big enough.
No,
footprint.
empty dir is basically telling the container you have a file system that
Yeah,
is created on the fly when the container starts and will be deleted completely as soon as the container ends.
right. So we don't
on
have to
2
worry
minutes.
about somebody putting something really big in here and running out of space or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Although I think empty dir is mounted in memory, hence you have RAM requirements there because you're consuming more RAM, but I might be wrong here.
User
it's
has
predictable.
control of the container.
Fair point. True, right. So they can bump their limits. Yeah.
Yeah, and predictable amounts of space, right? Because they aren't going to be able to really put much in there.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't put the refinement status. Perfect. So let's have another refresh. So all the tickets that we refined so far were part of this current milestone. See. And we don't have any research label for this. And the remaining one are for the following up milestone 0.9. So since we have only 12 minutes, I don't want to open Pandora box and start to discuss a very huge topic and set of tickets that are connected between each others. So we'll keep these for next week. Instead, I see this research from Florian. Could you please?
Yes, of course. Yeah, right now we have the problem or maybe the inconvenience that, for example, we have dependencies between our submodules. So, for example, the lifecycle operator depends on the metrics operator because we're using the Keptn metrics in the evaluations. And both of those operators are using parts of what's located in the certificate manager, because this now also provides the library functionality where you can make sure that the certificate secret for the webhooks is available. And therefore we have this inconvenience that we frequently have to upgrade the dependencies. For example, when we've changed something in the certificate manager, we get a renovate PR that upgrades the dependencies in the operators. And then if we have merged that dependency update in the metrics operator, we get another renovate PR in the lifecycle operator. And to make this a little bit easier for us, we should look into Go workspaces, which is a recommended way of handling this kinds of situation where you have dependencies between different submodules within repositories. So with the Go workspace, you're able to just use what's here in the same repository. And as an example, I've linked the FlagD repository of the open feature project because they have a similar concept where they have a shared core submodule, which is then used by other modules in the same repository. So we can look into using the same concept here. For the most part, it should be relatively straightforward. One thing that might be a little bit tricky or needs to be adapted would be the Docker files, because now in the Docker file for each module, you would now also have to have access to the other submodules of the repository. But here we can also use the the flag-D repository as a reference because they have pretty much the same obstacle here, and we're able to solve that.
And for pipeline, or generally speaking, make files.
Yeah, that's actually included in the second paragraph. Here I only mentioned the Docker files, but also the make files, and therefore also the pipelines using them will likely be touched.
Make files and workflows need to be adopted. I suggest to create a POC out of this research so we can see benefits, and then we can weigh the cons versus the pros of having workspaces, because maybe the complexity of the pipelines is out of control. Agree on the goal?
Sounds good.
Perfect. I will mark it as a chore. Then refined size as 1, since it's research. And I will try to have this as up, since this might require a lot of changes around. The better we see what we need to change, the better we can control different tickets. Okay. Then with only 7 minutes left, I don't want to open this big chunks of tickets, but we can simply discuss a bit at high level, so everyone can come prepare next week doing their own homeworks to discuss how we should implement readiness gates. So readiness gates is the new API introduced by Kubernetes 1.24 or 5, I forgot, where you can block the scheduling to take place until all the gates have been satisfied. Right now, we can prevent some containers to be deployed thanks to having our own custom plugin of the scheduler. But after KubeCon, we discovered that this might be a road blocker for many companies because they have their own special use case, and for that they have their own special scheduler. And since we rely on the default scheduler, KLT doesn't work for them. And readiness gates allow us to get rid of this scheduler plugin and instead rely only on native APIs of Kubernetes to prevent any workload to be scheduled and bound to a node. For that, we need to do a bump into our dependencies and start to use the controller runtime v version 0.15. Although this version is not that very easy to bump because there are a lot of breaking changes. So the first one is to rework how we do the injection. Sorry, or we do a dependency inject of the decoder. And we cannot do like we were doing before. We need to change that. And also other few things or functions have changed and we need to adapt the code. It's mainly on the main part of every operators, but it's still something that we need to do in order to be ready to introduce a new mutating webhook. This new webhook is registered only for creates. So it has only permission, or it's only invoked when a new manifest, a completely fresh new manifest is being applied against the APIs. If a manifest is updated, then this webhook will not be invoked. And here, this webhook just mutates the manifest in order to add a readiness gate. Instead of the scheduler, now we add a readiness gate. But everything should be behind the feature flag. Oh, sorry, this is the feature flag. So if this KLT.readinessGate feature flag is true, then this behavior will occur. Otherwise, this webhook will do nothing. We simply said, yes, everything that you send to the API server is fine for me. Why this? Because we don't want to get rid of the scheduler immediately. We need to wait until the readiness gates API are stable. And also we need to check if the Kubernetes scheduler, or sorry, the Kubernetes server is at the right version, because they plan to be stable in version 1.26 or 27. I also forgot exactly which version. Bye, Christian. Quite late to say bye. Yes, because before 1.24 there is no API available, so we still need to deploy the scheduler for older version of the server, API server. So based on that, we need to trigger on and off this feature flag. Then we need to adapt the existing mutation webhook, because right now we add a scheduler with this, but based on the feature flag KLT readiness gate, we need to change this behavior. If it's false, then that means we are using the scheduler approach, and the current behavior of the current mutating webhook stays the same. If the flag is true, instead this behavior should be only an update of the manifest. Sorry, my bad, I'm confusing things. If it's true, then this mutation webhook does nothing because the other one took place. And finally, in the implementation side of things, we need to adapt also the workload instance controller, because the workload instance controller is the one that knows when all the pre-tasks have been completed. And before we're notifying the scheduler, hey, look, all the pre-tasks are done. Now instead it has to change and remove the gate. So now the scheduler can pick up and deploy or bind the workload to a node. And the last big piece of work that we need to do is to mark it as deprecate, the scheduler. We don't remove it immediately, we just mark it as deprecated to say we favor readiness gates over our custom scheduler. And here we need to do a bit of trickery, because for the Helm charts, we need to check which version of the API server we are hitting, because based on that, we can set the feature flag value and decide if we need to create a deployment for the scheduler or not. And following that, we need also to provide good documentation. So adapt also the website. Overall, all clear?
Yes.
Perfect. We will go over more in details next week, because we are running out of time. So I don't want to steal more of your life. Thanks everyone for joining and the feedback, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.
To you tomorrow at the community meeting or next week at the refinement. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.